Well, what a season finale that was. Despite being shorter than some of the episodes that we'd recently had, this one felt like so much more happened, concluding every arc that we saw being developed over the course of this season and providing deaths, and what's that? Yeah, more deaths. Let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from the season finale. So let's get into it. Here is Foundation Season 2 Episode 10, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. With so much happening, the best way to approach this is to break down every character that had a large impact in the finale. Hari Seldon, Gale, and Salvor. Ignis was one of the many locations where the main action was happening in this episode. Hari Seldon was alive, and at the end of Episode 9 it left many of us wondering how it was even possible. Well, 2 episodes back, we heard that Gale knew that Seldon was drowning, and that something bad had happened to him due to her mentalic abilities sensing it. And we saw that with her knowing that something bad was happening to him, she used her abilities to intervene, and to reach out to the guard that was there, which was Venick. With that, she built a bridge of shared connection with Seldon, and killed the guard, and smothered his voice in the process so that nobody else would notice what was happening. Whilst doing that, she then painted the illusion that Venick was in fact Seldon. And in order for the illusion to stay strong and for Seldon to remain undetected, they counted prime numbers together, allowing that bridge to stay well intact. Hence why whilst on Ignis, since Hari Seldon left, we'd seen Gale counting on her own, something which Telem and even Salvor believed. This to me shows just how strong Gale actually is. She's the strongest mentalic on the planet, and has shown the true power that lies within her by managing to deceive everybody that was there. With Telem being killed, we saw all of the mentalics surround the beggar, and it was here where we found out that Telem had been using some kind of mentalic manipulation, and she was bending their thoughts, making them abide by everything that she said, something which most definitely tied into the dictatorship that she was leading. However now, they were free, which meant that they were prepared to offer themselves to follow Seldon, Gale, and Salvor. It was at the end of the episode where we saw that once they were gathered around in the hall that Gale was in only moments earlier, where she was on the verge of being consumed by Telem, that Josiah picked up a weapon and fired it towards her. The moment that this scene began, it looked like something was going on with Josiah, as it seemed as though he was struggling to keep it together, and then we found out why. Telem was able to jump into Josiah as Seldon was killing her, something which did surprise me, and it did also make me think, surely she could just do that now, seeing as though Josiah was killed by Salvor in response. The blonde mentalic that we'd previously seen was looking quite suspicious, and there was a lot of focus on her following Josiah's death, so could Telem have jumped into her? Personally, I hope not, because it feels like that part of the story has now been done, and it's not really needed anymore. When Josiah fired the weapon, we saw that he hit Salvor as she jumped in front of Gale. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really a big fan of this moment. The whole calling her mum thing was a bit cringe. They'd never done that before, and it didn't feel like it was ever going to happen, but it just felt like it was there for dramatic effect because she was dying. But hey, with Salvor then dead, it meant 2 main things. The direction of the future can actually be changed. Originally, Salvor was supposed to die 150 years in the future at the hands of the mule, but with her dying in the present day, it meant that the pathway could be changed if intended. And it also meant that it was just Seldon and Gale left there to try and build the second foundation that was needed. There was a very emotional scene that took place between Gale and Seldon right at the end, where we saw that Gale was struggling to deal with the fact that Salvor's death meant nothing, and Seldon was reflecting on Yana and the fact that she died for his cause. But focusing on that fact gave him the motivation to carry on the work of building the foundation, something which Gale took comfort in. The both of them then went into cryosleep for 150 years, with the intention of waking up once a year to check on the foundation and to make sure that the development was going well, and also to give the people a reason to believe and to keep going. They set it to that time so that they could be in the era of when the mule was around. As it happened, we saw their purposes flash before their eyes. Ra's was the purpose for Gale, as she was now uttering the same comforting words that he said to her way back in Season 1 when she originally went into cryosleep, and Seldon saw Yana. With the flash forward at the end, we saw that Gale had made it 152 years into the future, and the events that we saw had been sparked, but we'll get to the mule in a bit. Brother Day. Brother Day is no more. Well, the version that we know of, and boy, was it good watching him get defeated. With him destroying Terminus, we saw a look in his eye of pure evil. and one which was in complete contrast to the look that we saw 2 episodes back where he went to Terminus for diplomatic purposes. With the destruction of Terminus, we saw that he liked the idea of destroying all 7 other planets that were on side with Selden and his beliefs. With Bel Rios choosing not to jump the ship to Thespis, the next planet that Day planned on destroying, we saw that he commanded the navigator to program it. However, it wasn't possible. Each ship was jumping into the space occupied by its neighbor, and it was causing space to fold, something which was irreversible and meant that destruction was set to hit the ship that they were all on, and it would also impact the entire fleet. This was where we found out that the Spacers actually made the deal with Mallow a couple of episodes back, and the whole point of Mallow being captured was part of the plan. Selden wanted to lure Day into war so that all of his fleet would head towards Terminus and then ultimately get destroyed. So with Selden actually managing to contain all of the people of Terminus inside of the vault and not being destroyed, it weakened the Empire massively. The Spacers that were there were prepared to die because it meant that the future of the Spacers were able to live on, no longer under the Empire's rule. This was where the beginning of the end began for Day, as General Rios turned on Day whilst he was fighting Mallow. We saw castle technology being used, something which was shown to us in episode 3 of the show with Hober Mallow. Bel Rios slipped the node inside of Day's gown and was able to switch places with him as the airlock was opened and then shut. And we believed that Rios was thrown into outer space, but it was actually Brother Day, leading us to see his demise in front of our very eyes. A moment that was satisfying to watch, and I'm also glad that Rios got that moment because he had a vendetta against him. With Day defeated, we saw that the ship was still set to be destroyed, and Constant was the only individual that was able to survive, due to the pod that contained 1 day's worth of oxygen being able to get released. And with that, Constant left. Mallow then went on to open the 15-year-old wine that had been kept contained for a special occasion, and it turned out that it tasted disgusting, something which I thought was rather symbolic of the fact that one should just enjoy something in the present, rather than waiting and hoping that it will get better with time. Because truly, one doesn't know if it will taste all the better for it, or be around to enjoy it. And then we saw Rios and Mallow both succumb to the explosion. I was confused at first, as the mule said Mallow's name in the vision that Gel had. However, with us now knowing that the future can change, it most probably means that Mallow will most likely not be coming back again. Which is a shame, because he was definitely one of the better characters in the show, and provided the light-hearted yet powerful approach which was in contrast to everything and everybody else. Demoiselle. Demoiselle's story in this season finale was the most gripping piece that she's been involved in to date, and I thought learning about her origin would be the most interesting part. However, within this episode, we saw that she was notified about Brother Dusk and Enjoiner Rue being trapped in the chamber, which was the reason as to why she left Brother Day at the end of the previous episode. It was during this scene that we saw the outright confliction that she had in her mind, the understanding that she was just as trapped as what she was when she was not whole. Several hundred years ago, when she was trapped in pieces, she was trapped in the physical sense. But now, despite being complete, she's trapped from a mental sense due to the programming that Cleon put inside of her. She doesn't know if her feelings are truly hers, and that must be torture. It's clear to see that she cares for Brother Dawn, Day, and Dusk, but the programming that's inside of her was telling her that she had to kill them, as these iterations of them were threats to preserving the Cleonic dynasty. It was during this scene as well that we found out that it was herself who hired the Blind Angels to take out Day. And I'm going to take a win for that one, as I did predict it. I'll take it because I threw a theory out there about Josiah being the mule, but that was proved wrong. So I'll take a win where I can get it. Anyway, Demoiselle hired the Angels so that she could frame Queen Sareth for the murder and have it be pinned to Cloud Dominion, ultimately preventing Day from marrying her once he found out, which would allow the Cleonic reign to continue. Something which we saw taking place as Sareth was captured by Demoiselle later on in the episode. Demoiselle didn't want to kill Dusk and Rue, but reluctantly did, after embracing for a hug with Dusk. As tears rolled down her face, we saw her programming take over, and she killed them where they stood, in the very chamber that she was trapped in for thousands of years. We didn't see much more from Demoiselle until it came to the end of the episode, and it was during this moment that we saw that she was decanting a new dawn, day, and dusk, something which she'd never had to do before. But what was the most interesting about this was the fact that she had the Prime Radiant that Selden gave Day when they left the vault on Terminus. So she must have snuck it out with her, so she wanted it for herself. We saw that she couldn't understand it completely, but what was interesting was the line that she said, "I can already see that wonderful things lie ahead." This to me ties into the conflict that's inside of her programming. Is it wonderful things in the sense that she sees that the dynasty will be destroyed and she may find her way to the freedom that she so desires? Or does she mean in terms of the Cleonic dynasty and that it's looking like it may be going on for several hundreds of years still? It's up for interpretation, but knowing how she truly feels based on what we saw when she was in the chamber with Dusk, I think her eventual freedom could well be on the cards. The Radiant gives her an added layer of power, as she'll be the only individual that will be able to understand it. Sareth and Dawn. With Sareth being framed for the hiring of the Blind Angels and it looking like she was going to be trialed for treason, which came with the punishment of death, Dawn managed to intervene once he saw Demoiselle taking her away. It was here where he saw that Demoiselle had the mark of green upon her neck, something which Dusk said to him which symbolized a traitor, so he knew that Dusk would have planted it on her for him to see. So this made him realize that he needed to flee Trantor if he wanted to survive. With Dawn and Sareth managing to get away on a ship due to Sareth's servants using a face scrambler to appear as them and get them to confirm that they were going to marry one another following Day's death, we also saw that Sareth was pregnant with Dawn's baby. This is something that might not seem important now, seeing as though they're fleeing Trantor, but with there being two Dawns that exist at one time, and Sareth holding the heir to the throne, albeit not the Cleonic dynasty, this could prove to be a threat in the future. When the show comes back, it will be 150 years in the future most likely, so I do wonder what that will mean for the rivalry that could be present. Could their child be the Mule? It's definitely not worth ruling out. Brother Constant. With Brother Constant going free from the ship that exploded, we saw that as her oxygen was at the point of running out, she stumbled across the vault, which was now essentially floating around in outer space. Upon the vault, we saw that Polly had survived, Selden had survived, and the entirety of Terminus had survived. The line, Terminus needed to be sacrificed so the Foundation would survive, was one that hit hard, and it showed that the power of the Foundation living on beyond the planet is worth its weight when it comes to the belief that people need, and the future recruitment. There were so many people on board the Vault, and we got a look at what it was truly capable of in terms of its size, so we know that all of Terminus managed to survive, even Constant's father. The Mule. The final thing that we saw in this episode was 152 years later. We saw the Mule on his knees talking and stating that he knew that Gale was now present in his timeline and that he needed to find her and destroy her before she found him, even if it meant burning everything. I got the impression that he was speaking to somebody that was in front of him, especially as he said, "She's here in our time." It makes me wonder who it could be that's in front of him. Could it be an iteration of Telem? Could it be Sareth's child who has the potential of being a kind of mutant child due to its biological makeup? Or is there a Mentalic who drifted along the way whilst Gale and Harry were in cryosleep? It's one that we're going to have to wait a long time for, but it's something that I can't wait to see unfold. It has to be the main thing in Season 3, right? Overall review. I thought this was a phenomenal episode of the show, the best one yet. It was the perfect way to close off the season, and we saw a resolution being made to each of the arcs, whilst also the setting up of the next season leaving a lot of mystery for when it does return. I love the fact that we're going to be 150 years in the future because it means that so much could have changed. However, I picture the reality of it being that not that much is actually going to change under the Cleonic dynasty, which will be great to see because it will show that things need to change in order for progression. All of the cast did a phenomenal job in the finale, but I have to give it to Lee Pace as Brother Day. His acting during the fight scene is something that just quite literally gives off pure evil, and it rounded off a great performance from the entirety of the season. I would also say that Laura Berner's Demoiselle gave off a real emotional one too, her best to date. The conflict that was present along with the yearning to be free was something that was felt when watching. I wasn't a big fan of Demoiselle in the early parts of the season, but week by week the character grew on me, and I love the complexity that she brings. In fact, I'm actually thinking of doing a full breakdown on the character. With this season being a huge success and it getting better and better as time's gone on, I can't wait to see what's to come in Season 3. Let's just hope that it gets commissioned. I have a feeling that it will. I just want to say a massive thanks for tuning into the videos every week. It's been a blast chatting about the episodes every week and seeing everyone's theories in the comments, even if some that I've provided have been wrong. But hey, that's the nature of not reading the book and just watching the show, I suppose. So, there you have it. Foundation Season 2 Episode 10, Ending Explained. What did you think of the season finale? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.